For anybody showing up in like 1 second, we'll start the show in 2 minutes. We'll give other people a chance to join slightly slower than you. Hey, Amanda and the Maestro. Good to see you all. I'm going to enjoy the kids are in bed cookie while we wait for everyone else to show up. Hopefully you don't mind a little crunching. Hey, Seth. Hey, chess numbers. You recovered your entire tilt. That's good. Just fixing my mic a little bit. The stand was in the suitcase. Should be okay. All right. Just finished an OTB tournament. Oh, tell us about it, Seth. Tell us about it. Thanks, professional Potzer. Did Seth get to play a standing man? Yeah, we got to see a Seth game on the show today, right? Pulled a BS win out for 4 out of 5 and second in under 1500 USCF. Right on, Seth. Right on. So you are worth your 1400 plus rating. Like the free redeemed lessons, Daster? I don't even know. That'd be Kostya. And it's probably like 6 a.m. or something for Daster, right? Maybe 7. And your loss was to Drew. Drew must have done pretty well too then. Wow. Can't imagine being awake at 6. I can't imagine being asleep at 6, unfortunately. So how's everybody been? I know it's been a long time. Does this channel still exist? Are you guys... Have Kosi and Jesse been around? I tried to stream once or twice from Hawaii, and generally there were like 10 people instead of 100. It seemed like ominous. Aha, 3.5 for Drew. Oh yeah, Jesse was just playing at an OTB tournament. I do think I heard that. I think it's done. I hope it went well. This week, my kids are still home from school on quarantine protocol. Their school's open, but we just got back, so we're keeping them home for a week. And then, supposing we don't have COVID, they might go to school next week. So I'm just gonna inch my way back in this week, and then if things go well next week, I'll truly be back. Right, Amanda won a Blitz tournament. Skills and calm under pressure. What? You're on the official broadcast of the Champions Chess Tour. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Did you mention that you could beat Wesley So one-on-one? Did you bring that up? While they had you on there. You forgot to mention it. What use are all those statistics if you don't mention some of the most important and shocking ones? No, Seth, he's never had a chance to play Wesley So, but the numbers project that he would score about 73% against Wesley. Next Chessable stream. I have no idea. Dopey Code. I had sort of heard that maybe Jesse didn't have permission to stream Chessable. Maybe that's not the most up-to-date. My news is like 2 months old at this point. Yeah, it's actually systemic ducking, Seth Lichtenstein. It's not just Wesley. It's the whole system of FIDE ratings and how tournaments are organized. Yeah, pretty much the last time I got my news, it was June. And I've got no news to, share with you guys. I've got no news to bring back. I haven't kept up with my chess, training or anything. I need to get back in shape because I want to play another tournament this year, and I just spent 2 months getting rusty. After spending the previous month getting unrusty. Daster back to 1400. I really want to see you at 1595, Daster. That's where I see you. 1595. Dritz here, yes. If Daster were 1595, it would both work with his username and it would work for winning under 1600 section prizes. Okay. Let's make an agenda for games we're going to look at today. I want to see a game of Cess. I want to see a game of Dritmans. I want to see a game of Dasters. Let's put that on the list already. Drit, I already have the game of yours I want to look at. So that's already, I've already got the link open over here. All right. Good night, Skiances. Good to be back too. Hopefully we'll have a bigger overlap next time. Yeah, so show us a bad game, Daster. If you're in a slump and you can't get out of it, we don't need to see a good game you played 3 months ago. We need to see a game that's got you in your slump. Give me the most typical game, illustrative of your current slump, so we can figure out how to get you out of it. Moving to California is not the worst idea, Skian says. As long as you don't move straight into like a fire. Do we have Duncan out here? We don't, Skian says. We don't, I'm sorry. Yikes. Yeah. All right, Seth, you want to pick out a game of yours from this OTB tournament for us? Hey, always double check. It's been a while. Hope you're good. We're almost done with the intro, folks. The show will start very soon. You're in the verified. Cool, cool, cool. That must be starting soon. Right, the power grid is broken. Yeah, I was trying to think, like, I think I started thinking about this maybe 2 or 3 years ago when the fires were getting really bad and had to keep the kids in for weeks on end. Or if they were at school, they couldn't go out for recess and blah, blah, blah. And I was wondering if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? But no place seems to be perfect. The best suggestion I've heard, the place with the least downsides maybe, was New Zealand. And then the downside was that it was really, really expensive. So like hard to get in there, hard to emigrate there, expensive once you get there. And it's got the plus and minus of being far from everyone, right? Like sometimes it's a good thing to be far away from everyone, and other times when you've been away from everyone for a while, then you're like, maybe everyone wasn't so bad. I kind of miss them. You know, where are my chess tournaments? Where are my gatherings of people? All right, before we get slapped with just chatting, let's get into our first game here. Is being what? Yeah. He's being noisy, yeah. That is true. Spain, maybe. Minnesota is both the U.S. and Canada. Interesting. Can you get like free healthcare in Minnesota? Snow 8 months a year? Ugh. Oh, you can just cross the border to go see a doctor. That makes sense. But yeah, I'm not down with 8 months of snow per year. I know someone living in Taiwan. They say a lot of things are good there, except they've got like a dramatic drought going on, oddly enough. You think of it as kind of like a rainy tropical place, and that's what it was. But apparently, it was so rainy and tropical for so long that they never really built ways to store water because it was like completely unnecessary. And then with like the weird changing weather patterns, suddenly they didn't get their normal rainfall and they just didn't have a reserve of water. So that's a weird downside for Taiwan. Um, but Dasser, if a lot of your games are being decided by one move blunders, yeah, pick one with a one move blunder. That'll be right on. Okay, I've got a game from Seth. Super. Is it only a 25 move game, Seth? Your game from tonight? Is that correct? Okay, here's Dritman's almost Mona Lisa of chess. Folks, this one should be good. Hey, John Twitch. Good to see you. Okay, so White's playing the Evans Gambit. Dritman says, yeah, let's just leave this. Let's just leave this random pawn over here and keep controlling the d4 square. So White says, yeah, let's just keep pushing queenside stuff. A5 does threaten to trap the bishop at least, so Black can't just ignore these moves White's playing. Dritman plays a6. A5 also looks playable. White develops the piece. And now there's pressure on this, so you really need to defend it. And playing f6 is going to take away the knight's best square and make it hard to castle, so all the moves from Dritman so far are completely logical. b5 comes in. I think you can trade it once, trade on a1, and then move the knight pretty much wherever you like. And Black is solid. It's not like White's done anything terrible, but what? Now White's done something terrible. Well, not terrible. We're not going to call sin yet, but it's. I mean, certainly Black's position is going to be slightly better than White's now. Just nothing crazy you can do to like destroy this move. It's just White's hurt their structure a bit. So there's now no pressure on Black, and White's structure is long-term worse. So we develop. We expect White to play d3. And then, you know, castles, bishop g4. And life goes on. But White now played d4. Not accepting a disadvantage. not accepting a disadvantage, or, not happy to be slightly worse for a long time, preferring to, take it into a different kind of fight. Fair enough. So, Drit spent a lot of time here between taking or just saying cool and castling, right? And of course taking here. 3 kind of options. Yeah, as an Evans Gambit player, you get the spirit. Yeah, I mean, it's not like an Evans Gambit player is not excited about here, 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 and then, I mean, this bishop could go to any of these 3 squares. Honestly, they're all perfectly good. I mean, there's no wrong move here. The position's quite nice. So there's nothing here for white of any kind of joy, right? This bishop's doing nothing. This pawn is weak, and black's comfortable. So there's no joy. So white tries to mess with it. Yeah. Yeah, the decline variation is already like very, very frustrating for most white players who play the Evans. Like, with one simple and perfectly acceptable move, you can throw them off their game. If I were ever playing like a random game that I really wanted to win, and I randomly faced the Evans, and I had no prep and my opponent had no prep, it was just suddenly they played the Evans against me, for sure I would play this move. Like, it's the obvious it's the obvious choice. I don't know if it's better or worse than taking, like at a computer level, but at a human level, it's like the obvious move to just steer the game in your favor. Anyway, white played d4. Driven felt it was a sin and decided to take white up on it with knight takes e4. I'll just say that takes, and then like castling could also punish white. Because it leaves stuff sort of dangling and white's position is awkward. So there's more than one option that might punish white for their play. You felt like pawn takes would open up the dark squared bishop. Yeah, but you can't really keep this dark squared bishop from being opened anymore either, right? Like, you played knight e4, he played queen e2, but I mean, you can't avoid this pawn trade anymore, right? Like, this pawn can't move. So the pawn trade's a done deal. The bishop's more or less opening up, except in some line where white plays d5 for some reason. But like here, white could, let's say, castle, and the bishop's going to open up. And, it's even possible to punish an opponent with this move. And I know this move doesn't seem, like sexy or exciting or anything like that. But a move like this can punish an opponent because, look, it's developing a piece, defending the opponent's only threat, preparing to maybe fight for the a4, b5 squares, which are both potential weaknesses, leaving this hanging, leaving the pressure on this square here. And, sometimes, sometimes just like a simple move that, develops your last piece and does everything a move can do, will lead to a punishment because their position's just not good. So, it's not even a matter of like settling for something small because we're risk averse or something. Sometimes this is literally the best move, and sometimes the advantage is quite big, even though you've played a move that looks modest. Sometimes. So, for example, let's say, they're worried about this, and they choose to take, and then they choose to keep their bishop. Let's say maybe you go knight g4, threatening f2. Right? I mean, the bishop came back to defend this pawn. I don't know where else it was supposed to go. It was attacked by a pawn. So let's say they do this. We go here. They castle to defend f2. We play queen h4. And it's already game over. I mean, unless I'm missing something, which is possible. I'm not super warmed up, but this is like a simple winning pattern that you'll sometimes see white playing in the e4, e5 openings, where they attack this square, and then when you castle, the queen comes out. It's rare to see black do it, but, you know, there it is. Boom. Seems like white's done because these two places are threatened, right? So just because I played bishop d7 didn't mean I was settling or playing in a minimalist kind of fashion. Sometimes the best move is just to finish development, and then you play like your aggressive move next move, right? Because like, okay, in this same position here, I might be thinking of knight takes e4. That's nice and aggressive, right? So I can calculate it if I think white's playing really badly. I play knight e4, leaving c6 hanging, right? Idea if they take here, you know, I take on f2, or I play queen h4 or something, leaving everything hanging. You know, who knows? So that I've got checkmate and the bishop's not in my own way. And their knight could give some kind of discover check, and I would play c6 and not care, right? So this would be like the super aggressive option, right? Knight e4, queen h4, yar. But very often, instead of playing knight e4, even though you see it as being this great move, very often you can just say like, well, I'll castle, and next move, you know, they can't stop knight e4 and knight g4. Or I'll play bishop d7, and next move I'll get one of these knight moves. And often that's actually a stronger punish. You remove like the one liability you have, which let's say in this position is this bishop checking your king here, is maybe like the one liability that your king could get in the way of your rooks. So you remove that one liability with a developing move that's increasing your power, right? Bishop d7 a little bit. Castles gives you rook e8, right? So it's not like your move's doing it's not just like it's not like you had a bishop on g4 and you brought it back to d7 to defend c6, right? You're actually improving your position, and you're setting yourself up so that next move, the aggression is going to hit even harder. So just because we think it's sin doesn't always mean the most aggressive move is the punishment. Not every time. And honestly, ed4, knight d4 castles is like my instinct, my first instinct when I see what white did here. That's my first instinct. Ooh, we're getting a huge raid, either of Diabloers or chess people, but thank you for the raid. Good to see you, Llama. Shout you out here. Folks, Mr. Llama is best known as a Diablo 2 speedrunner, I believe, but is also a fantastic chess player. He was my partner in this Twitch tournament I played last week, so you guys can check him out. So welcome to all the Llama folk. If any of you have any passing interest in chess, this is the channel for you. If you have no interest in chess, thanks for stopping by. You know, we got nothing else for you here, so you can run along and we won't be offended. But I'm David. I'm a chess teacher, have been for 26 years, since I was a kid. And today's show I'm looking at games that my viewers have played, and then giving them feedback on those games. So we're gonna look at games of players rated 1600, 1500, and 1400 in the queue right now. And then, I mean, sometimes we look at games of players rated 600 and sometimes 2000. So we go all over the place. So yeah, you can whisper me the link, Daster, and we'll do that. Nice to meet you too, B-Boy Physics. And yeah. Let's pursue with this game. So my first instinct, Dritman, is that as this comes in here. Oh, Llama, there's Baron. He's my student who I mentioned to you was a big fan. Okay, he's one of my students that I mentioned the other day. Okay, so my instinct is really to take on d4 and then just castle. So we leave c6 hanging, but we're thinking that in general takes leaves the opponent no joy in a position like this. You could try to just finish the game with knight g4 with an attack. You can also play this bishop a6 move. Just saying, like, castle. And this looks hellacious for white. Right? So this is one way I win some games quickly sometimes, Drit, is with this idea of like sacking c6 and then coming here. It's not so much for the opponent to do. So that's one instinct I have. Now, after we castle, they could also not take here. But if they don't take here, notice how e4 is hanging, right? If they castle and we take on e4 for free, things aren't especially going well for white here either. Jalapia, no, I don't have a video on that exact topic. But that would be a good topic. So thank you for that. I'll make a note for myself over here. And I will give you one, since you've given me a really useful tip, Jalapian, I'll trade you back one useful tip for you. A lot of times you hear people say, castle as soon as possible. It sounds like you're like just slightly beyond that. Like you're like, well, that's not like, there's other things going on in chess. How do I know when I really do need to castle or how fast to castle, right? I will say this, a lot of really good players like to make sure that they have the ability to castle, but they don't necessarily rush castling. So they're like rushing the ability to castle so that they, if they see a threat coming from the opponent, like if you're white in this position, you see like rook e8 coming, you just want to be able to castle in time for that. But white has been able to castle this game for like 6 moves and hasn't, right? Instead, they prioritize gaining space on this side. Then they prioritize like breaking open the center and stuff like that. But they know that whenever black plays rook e8, they can castle. So they're not going to have something, disastrous happen. So advanced players or whatever will keep that in mind to be able to castle. Okay, so if they castle here, right, I was saying then you could probably take this pawn here and, feels good for black, right?
Hype cheer. Always grateful for the great tips and lessons.
All right. Thank you, Michiko. You are always welcome. So in the game, Drit took on e4, and his idea is that white, that the player who was white and now has kind of a position that a black player would usually have, isn't going to be able to either push on d5 to win this knight or take on e5 to win back their pawn because of threats on f2. But of course, d5 would have been a very complicated option, which white didn't play. I imagine that's what you probably spent the most energy on, Drit, and you're pretty good at working hard on one critical variation when it's clear what the critical variation is. So I'm going to believe that you took this move pretty seriously, probably. And you would have probably first checked so that white can't castle, and then I'm going to guess that you would have castled yourself with the idea of playing a position like this with bishop a6 coming again. I'm going to guess that's probably approximately what you had in mind. Knight takes was also an option. Okay. All right, so your opponent played queen e2, attacking the knight, which is logical. Now, let me just say, Drit, if you had played pawn takes d4, knight takes d4 before taking on e4, in a queen e2 position, it would be great to just castle, right? I mean, that's very desirable. Of course, castling first gives white different options than that. But okay, so you just save the knight here. Right, and I think I was expecting you to play bishop f5 here when I played through the first 10 moves of this game, which is just a completely random square for the bishop. And maybe a terrible idea. Doesn't seem particularly good. Yeah. It was my weird instinct. I imagine white then has to play d5 or lose. More or less. So they would, and they would take the knight, and it would be messy. So, okay, you save your knight, white takes, and you take. Okay. Actually, a nice, simple solution from you. You're just letting the whole center explode. You're not trying to be up a pawn. You're not trying to do anything fancy. Just let the whole center explode, and then you're going to be slightly better developed or more active is the idea. It's nice. It's not like a brutal punish. Like white's not dead. Does d5 not? So at this point, Seth, d5 couldn't be played anymore because he brought his knight back to f6. But yeah, before white played queen e2, d5 was a big option at the cost of these complications. So here. So on queen e5, you probably play bishop e6, not queen e7 because you're not looking to trade queens. And if your opponent really pushes their luck, you'll probably be happy. And if they castle and you castle, it's just a pleasant small advantage for you. But, not the end of the world yet for your opponent either. So the opponent took this way. You got to castle. And now white plays that kind of like pushing your luck kind of move, right? So this, again, this is like, you're pushing your luck. You're like trying to win a pawn here when you're not castled. And you run into, castles, and white's like, I'm winning a pawn. And just, yeah, now rook e8's threatened. So castling gets forced. Knight d4, hitting here and here. Takes, hitting here. Defending it with this, maybe. The bishop's on this square. But we can just play knight g4, e4 at this point. And all right, Josh West. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. So this basically, this is too aggressive. Trying to win a pawn with a move like knight g5 and knight takes e6 here. It's way, way, way too dangerous. The counterattack you're going to get against f2 while black's castling and you're fishing for the pawn. So, so knight e5 got played. You castle, takes here. And now you came to a6. You range from 1400 to 1600. Nice. So the last year you got to see Llama make that similar climb. I hear Llama was about 1150 or so a year ago, and now he's up to 1650. It's a really, really good year. Very impressive year, especially for somebody who's not playing chess, 40 hours a week or something, like you might think you'd need for, a 500-point year. Okay, so bishop a6, great idea. Hitting the queen, trying to stop castling. White plays c4 to try and hold on. Right, and now, how to give white the thrashing that white deserves, right? How to give white the deserved thrashing. You want to somehow like break through this square or this square. It's hard to... Queen d6 is what got played, yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the best move, and it's what Driven played. Developing the rooks, challenging white's best piece. That's, defending some of the squares we want to use. Trying to use rook e8 as a way to get things going. And the queen could come to c5 or b4 at some point. Yeah. Queen f3. Okay. I mean, taking would be certainly critical. And then, I mean, it's attractive to take the exchange, but actually the boring rook e8 move is good enough to win for black. The point is that after white takes and black takes back, white's got 2 rooks against a queen, which is a very, very close material balance. Problem is, black's threatening c6, which would trap the bishop and put black way too far ahead. And black's also threatening bishop c4, which would leave the king busted, right? So if we save this bishop here, it's probably the best move. Well, then there's still c6, so we can't even keep the bishop here. So if we save the bishop, then we're going to run into check. Bishop here takes. And the white king's going to be too weak here. White can't coordinate these rooks in a way that competes with the black queen. So that looks really bad for white. So in the game, white just played queen f3, defending the bishop and getting the queen off of this. So now if rook to e8, the queen won't be lost. But I'm going to guess black plays rook e8 anyway. No. Why not rook e8? This must be a mistake by Dritman. Because rook e8 pretty much looks like forced checkmate. I mean, the only move I see that slows down checkmate is like moving the queen back to e2. Yeah, the most stylish way to do it, Dritman, is always to self-fork your pieces. And the king can't run, I mean, with or without taking, right? The king can't run in these situations because check, white can't cover the diagonal, pushes the king into the corner, and then checkmate here. So on rook e8, I mean, yeah, as you said, maybe bishop e4, but then you just take it and whatever, nothing to do left. Oh man. So you gotta wonder on this one for sure, Dritman. You gotta wonder what blinders kept you from playing rook e8. Because that's the move that's being called for here, right? The position's screaming for some rook e8. And you know, you're an aggressive guy and you were in your kill mode, right? I know you were in this game thinking like kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. So we got to wonder what kept rook e8 from cropping up as an option. I mean, it was an option to like win the queen, so it wasn't that you never considered rook e8. It was one of your moves. It was like one of your, you know, like the moves at your fingertips. Like, you know, we couldn't say you never considered bishop f2. That was a move on your mind this game. You probably thought about, you know, these kind of moves for the knight, this kind of move for the bishop, this move for the rook. So what made rook e8 not come up for you here? That's a very, very important soul search for you to do. You were tunneling on breaking this down. That makes sense. It's good. It's good. Benjamin Bach, thank you so much for the raid. Folks, if you are not already followers of this channel, it's a great channel. Benjamin is a fantastic blitz player. He often works through puzzles. I've seen him play against viewers. So, oh, that's true, Daster. 7 cubed. So I recommend Benjamin's channel for sure. And Night Friend, yes, the California Unicorns are playing in the very short Pro Chess League Arena event in September. So we'll see how that goes. I am the manager of that team, so that will be some upcoming content in September on this channel here. We'll cover the Unicorns team. And speaking of teams, folks, do you know about this arena that we want to play on Friday? It's coming up in like 3 days. Here, this is coming up. I thought you might be, Francisco. Check this out. There's going to be an arena on Friday. There's like a prize for, the biggest team. There's prizes for biggest scores. So let's turn out and have fun there. I hear we've been losing some sub battles while I wasn't here. I'm not too happy about that. But let's go crush this arena. That would be pretty fun. And I think that's something where if we just swarm the thing, we can do really well. Yeah, Francisco, it seemed like there might not be anything this year for Pro Chess League, but there's going to be at least one week event. Yeah, Dripman, I already got Georg Meyer to play for us on Friday. So I've already recruited a big gun for the dojo team. And I'll probably bother a couple more people just for the fun of winning as a team, right? It would be like, here we are, the team of 1200s. And we brought a couple GMs to this party. So, yeah, we're going to try and win that thing on Friday because I'm just going to say that's going to be fun. You won your sub battle for the dojo and lost for 2 other channels. Perfect, Amanda. Good work. Just normal school on Fridays. Seth, just switch periods with like chess club and math, and do like a chess club for like an hour Friday morning. Have all your students play on our team too. Yeah. Yeah. What is this thing doing? No. No! Some Microsoft thing is taking over my computer. Ah! All right. Yes, Foos, we will look at that line again, absolutely. Yeah, the Uruguayan player, exactly. Yeah, you don't even have to get any wins. Just showing up. And as some of you, I don't know if everybody's familiar with arenas, but for those of you who are familiar with arenas, you may know this better than me, but I believe that with an arena, you can join and play one game and then just, it doesn't start a second game unless you say like, play my next game. So it's like a 2-hour time period. You could pop in at any point and play one game. And then that would count as one more dojo person who was in the arena. So, and if you won your game, you'd be keeping someone from one of the other teams busy for like 5 or 10 minutes while not letting them score any points. So even if you only play one game, it could be a great contribution to our team, actually. So I don't think that you need to have 2 hours blocked off in order to like, win something for the dojo. Yeah. So yeah, turn up, play a game, should be cool. All right, Foos wants to see this move again. Bishop a8, rook e8, takes, and now he's suggesting castles. With the idea of bishop takes c4, rook c1. So Foos, I was thinking that in this position, black could play the move c6, trapping the bishop. Do you have an idea in mind for white against this little vicious move? Exactly, Seth. Just pop in for one game, and you'll get to feel like you were part of that team. And then when we win something, it'll be awesome. Okay, Scott, who runs a lot of arenas, confirms. When you join the arena, it's going to give you one game. Like whenever you click join, it'll give you a game. But if you're only going to be free like an hour into the arena, wait an hour to join, right? Join when you have time to play one game. Play that one game, and then you can just leave it right there. So, hey, Nordovik, we're talking about you today. 3.5 out of 5. Not bad. Played somebody tough in the last round. All right, Foos has the idea of knight c3, planning a rook to d1 to sort of like bother Queenie. And yeah, it's not easy to play knight c7 and trap this bishop without opening up the back rank, huh? Yeah, that's a good move, just developing a piece. The arena is an well, actually, it's a club arena, Maddie, so it's only going to be open to people whose clubs have registered. Kosia has registered our club to play, so if you guys are part of our club, you can play. This is our club if any of you are not part of our chess.com club. Anybody who's a part of this club will be able to play in the arena. So, yeah, you're already a member of that chess.com club, so. All right, so maybe queen b4. Bishop takes c4. Okay, let's check this bishop takes c4 move, because it might be nice to hit f2 before white coordinates. So Foos said here rook to c1. Of course, rook e1 is also potentially a problem that we would have to consider. Against this move, I want to play here, but there's bishop f3. Could I just go queen c5 and just like the most obviously and brazenly storm towards f2? Oh, everybody please answer Scott's poll. He's going to run a tournament for you all if you answer the poll. So let him know your preference. Well, one way or another, he's going to run a tournament. If you vote in this poll, it'll be more likely a tournament that's of interest to you. Could get Jesse to bring his 2,700 out of retirement for this arena. Yeah, that'll be good. Queen d2 also suggests CloudSat. I was a little worried. But okay, let's try rook e1, because this is going to slow down my checkmate, is if I have to defend against checkmate. Pretty much have to play knight f6. And now white has time to develop, right? But white has to be careful about knight c3, queen to d2. This is good for black, because then the king has a good place to hide, and this bishop becomes even better. We could play bishop f3 here. We could just retreat the bishop. Whoa, everybody's happy I'm back. We're getting all the raids today. Who's in here now? Who's in here now? We in here now. Oh my god, I called that. I hope there wasn't too much lag on the stream and you guys got to see me call that. Ursus Polaris, Queen D2, Rook D1, Black could take on F2 with check. That's the idea. So it would get out of Rook D1. Wow. Cardiac Kid. Thanks, Damon. I really want to move this knight, and I'm really afraid of knight c3, of queen d2. So let's say bishop f3. Oh, but then I had this little idea here to maybe win a pawn. Check. Here. Check. Here. Oh yeah, folks, I was so excited I forgot to mention. The reason I gave you this shout out is so you can go follow Mr. Canty the third over at that link there on Twitch TV. He's a very fun guy. You'll have a good time over there. This only wins a pawn. I mean, it's not the end of the world, right? King comes. Oh yeah, part of it was to get the king to a weird square, and then we take here. This rook's trapped. This knight's trapped. It goes here. We've bothered white a little bit, but the game is far from over. So this is still a little bit controversial or messy, this position. As Foos asked us to double check, he was right. Bishop f6, I'm happy about Cladstat. I feel like this guy gets supremacy, and I'm happy to tuck my king here. But yeah, this move here could be considered, and rook e8 is not completely finished instantly. Not completely finished instantly. Black's better. I'm very confident, but I'm not sure of exactly how much. So not enough to resign. You definitely have to play out that game. Definitely. Not just the sets. Everybody's got to play that position out. So that tells us it's not completely a knockout, right? If I'm going to say that everybody should keep playing that position as white, then it's not a total knockout. Which means bishop a8 is a better defense than queen f3, which we already knew because rook e8 now is basically checkmate. This is, I mean, queen f3, rook e8, the opponent could have resigned. So Drit cuts the king off from castling, and that's going to create a more complicated game. Bishop takes f6, comes down. Dritman, if Merson had taken the rook, what did you have in mind? I have a feeling that you'd planned rook e8 here. Yeah. So rook e8 was definitely like at the top of your list of ideas. Yeah. Okay, so your opponent takes here. Now it's a whole mess. Now it's just a whole mess. Wow. I don't know what's going on here. Does rook e8 still win here? Did you consider rook e8 in this position? Tell me what's going on, Drit. Rook e8. I guess bishop e4? But it's got to be great to make your opponent retreat that bishop to e4 so it can't take anything. Yeah, rook e8's completely winning, right? The only move is bishop e4, and then check. If they take on e8, it's actually checkmate, right? Oh, I guess there's queen e3. Right, but, you know, more or less checkmate. So you're going to see bishop e4 come in from the opponent. Now I think you can just take like this, right? And they're not going anywhere. Black's got all the time in the world to win however they want to. Man. It's interesting, Grit. You were happy to sack the rook over here, but you didn't want to sack the rook there. Here's another Evans Gambit game you need to know, Drit. Okay. So what should white play here? Okay, rook e1. Do you care which one? It doesn't matter. I would do this because this one can move. Okay, now what? Oh yeah, rook e5 might be good. All right, I'll take. We need control of this diagonal. We don't need to bust things open on this side just yet. Takes. And now? Queen z3. Good move, Daster. This is what Fischer played. All right. I don't think Drittman's going to miss rook e1 in the future. Back to the game. Bishop takes f6. Okay, rook e8's a knockout again. Drittman plays this check. Bishop blocks and then takes back. Okay, so right now, materials equal. White can't castle. And you might even be threatening f5. I don't know exactly what you're threatening here. Knight d2. Ooh la la. Oh man. Presumably your position's still good here, even though you haven't knocked the opponent out, right? That was Fischer versus Ruben Fine, who was like maybe the best American player of the 30s. So he was an older gentleman, I imagine, by the time Fischer pummeled him. I might be able to get to it, Nordovik. I'm a fan of looking at the OTB games. instead of knight d2. Maybe queen f5 right there. Yeah, so there's a checkmate threat. But maybe black can brilliantly play rook e8 right here to attack the bishop and forget about this. Right? Because now if you take, we develop the rook while white was moving the bishop. That's the old recapture when you can instead of capturing, right? Look at that. We're trying to recapture once again, folks. Takes here, right? And then f3, f5, winning. And if check here, black's threatening this. On f3, there's f5. And on queen check, king here, we lose a tempo, have to defend this. Here. And honestly, black could try and style on white by winning the game with king d6. It's an unusual winning move, so it might be fun to do that. But, you know, in theory, just attacking the bishop with your bishop is simple. Chess numbers has got the numbers for us. Yeah, I think that beats queen f5. That rook e8 move. So knight d2, bishop a5, and your opponent uncorks an amazing move. This king should be completely dead, but white avoids losing any pieces and thus keeps the game going. Rook a to d8 when the king beckons is a surprise. The other surprise here, Drid, is that you really wanted your queen on light squares when it's your opponent's dark squares that are, you know, weak. So I think that was probably a wrong instinct that you had. In the position where your opponent plays bishop f6, giving up their dark square bishop, the truth is you want your queen on the dark squares because they're going to be wide open now. And the only reason you don't do this is because you don't want to trade queens. Although even this is winning for you. Oh no, gf6 is white's move. Yeah, not winning for you. So you really want the queen on the dark squares though. And I think that's an adjustment in sort of concept that could be useful for your instincts in a whole wide range of positions. White's dark squares are weak. The queen's uncontestable on the dark squares. So that's right, Foos. I think it was just a casual game. But here I think you're like aiming at the wrong spot with this rook move, right? We should be aiming at the king. I mean, I want the queen back where she was. But moves that come to mind are rook a to b8 and queen e5. Are kind of like prime moves that come to mind. Couldn't think of a new plan. The plan is to go for the king. That wasn't one of your thoughts? Thanks, Budsy. That's what I'm doing, actually, yeah. I've probably already got enough games to keep me busy for tonight, but just in general, for anybody wondering and for the future, you can either whisper them to me in Twitch, you can DM them to me in Discord, or you can email them to me in Gmail. Oh, more concrete than go for the king. Okay, so you had the general orientation of go for the king, hopefully, because that's a really good start. And then it's a question of what square, the focus square, right, in order to go for the attack, yeah. Which is not always easy to find, but I'm going to tell you again that it's likely to be these dark squares, right? So there's like queen e5, rook b8, looking at that square. So anyway, rook d8, Bishop h7, king h7, check here, and takes. Now, honestly, this isn't like a problem for you. You just lost a pawn. It is a problem for you that you wasted a move with rook here. Like if your rook were on b8 and the same tactic happened, I imagine it'll be a much better version of this for you, right? Here, check. Actually, you could argue that this is a wasted move and just play like king g7 or something, right? The problem is white might be able to give a perpetual. If you ever take, no, you hide behind the bishop. You don't want to allow a perpetual. And now white comes here. Now it doesn't seem like we can give checkmate in time for black, because white's giving it pretty quickly here. Rook fb8, says Eric. Oh, interesting move here from Eric. Rook fb8. Just trying to checkmate and giving the king somewhere to escape, and he just completely doesn't care about this. Odds that this is going to work? What do people think? The odds are 1. Why give up the rook astrit? To have an extra square for the king to avoid checkmates and perpetuals. Because he's just going for this, period. He's just going for checkmate. This position is extremely sharp. If anybody wasn't like clear on like how much is a tempo worth in this particular position, it's a position where a tempo is like maximum, maximum, maximum. And rook sacks are completely within reason. Completely in the air. Yeah, you guys don't have Eric's sense for the relative importance of time. This is exactly the kind of position where you have to consider rook fb8. It's a great idea. And if rook ab8 is the best move, it's the best move, and that's fine. The downside is we're getting a square here. So, like when I played rook ab8, bishop check, you had to decide what to do with the king, right? And we could do this. Oh, this is the nail in the coffin. That's the nail in the coffin. It even covers any perpetuals against our king. So what this shows, this position here right away, is that the bishop h7 check wasn't a problem. The problem was putting the rook on the wrong square and just not like moving towards our checkmate. Once you see a position like this, you see the bishops outperforming the knight or even the rooks, and black's geared up for checkmate, and there's not going to be any perpetuals. So white has no counterplay either. It's just instantly dead. Minus 10 million. Yeah, that's a good question, Seth. The queen can't check the king here because the pawn's covering this and the queen's covering that. So bishop h7 at first is just to take off this good dark squared bishop and open up the king a little bit more by getting rid of the h7 pawn here. White could also try queen h5, but then black has check, queen takes knight, which presumably wins for black, right? Check here and clean it up. So rook ab8 looks really good. I mean, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This here is basically a way to self-checkmate, I would think. Not quite checkmate yet. Now if bishop check, put your king on h8. You just need to avoid any checks from white for one move so you can deliver checkmate. Somewhere around here. If queen g4, king h8 should get out of check for one move. That's all you need, right? Queen f5, threatening here and here, but you've got checkmate. Rook ab8 looks like your answer, Drit. Right here. Just aiming at the maximum of weak squares near the king with your rook. If there were no pawn on the c file, you'd probably play rook c8. Here, rook ab8. Your best move here is probably still bishop d3, by the way. Just like in comparison. The rook on b8, it's probably still a good move, right? Sort of takes away a lot of squares from the king, covers your own king. Right now the bishop's a little bit in the way of your queen, and it's on a dangling square. Queen c3 is going to kill your dreams here. And you still have rook c3 winning, but you didn't play it because you were in real-time trouble. Man. That is some pain for sure. This is a brilliant move if you see rook c3. If you don't see rook c3, I can't give you like a brilliancy for playing rook d3. So you went to the rook endgame. And then let him here. I mean, it's just a detail. But if you don't want your opponent to defend the pawn, check the king first. So it has to choose which direction it goes. Right? And then come here. And black is still fine, of course. But whatever. We don't need to look at every move of this final blitz out of the game. Yeah, I mean, you were right about sin. You were right about trying to punish. You came very close to winning this game. You had your opponent in such a bad position that even when you missed, rook e8 checkmate, you still have like a winning position. His only move to keep the game going being that castle's queenside, which should still get checkmated in a couple moves. The king's just too weak here. This is like a great practical move in a blitz game against an opponent who's running low on time and can't like adjust in time to it. But objectively, I mean, white should just be completely lost right here. Just dead. If we put a rook on b8, I would think. So, yeah. All right. Exciting game. Hopefully, the next brilliancy you have to show us will feature that final kill with the rooks. You see how valuable the rooks are as like a part of your army, right? If you don't deploy the rooks correctly, it's very hard to finish off that game, right? Your opponent's king can be completely open. Your bishops and queen can be in great position. But if we don't use our rooks properly, it's such a drag on our overall game, right? It's really hard to finish a game off and win, right? So, yeah, really got to use our rooks well. Yeah, castling queenside is great originality by the opponent. Great practical spirit. Great try. Very, very great. All right, let me try and find Seth's game now over here. Still on that Tarrasch defense, huh? F4 is just really good for white foos. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So after rook b8 check, if white plays king to a3 to defend the a pawn, instead of playing rook a8 to try and win the pawn, black should play rook g to b4 immediately to keep the rook in the game and active and keep some practical chances. But it's a tough game for black after white lifts a rook to the third rank in response to that, probably. Rook d3. Okay, so that takes once here. Now taking on c4 looks sort of interesting. Knight c6. Bishop b4. Whoa, we hit the rook in the corner getting sacked. So instinctively, you'd want to go to the file, check here, check. Rook c2 is the idea to try and save the game here. And king d1 has to be tried. Knight e4, rook f1. Black doesn't have enough. White holds it off and holds the extra pawn. So rook c8 is nothing special. White's successful. It was close. These are important defensive moves that I think I found here for white. If you play random moves here for white, black will get enough counterplay. You have to stop rook c2. You have to cover knight f2. And then now after the knight retreats, you can start untangling. Whenever black plays d4, you just play e4. So you've got time to organize the rooks and the king. Okay, so the mistake is earlier. The mistake's going to be this bishop b4 move, which I saw that move and I wasn't happy. Okay, options for black that make sense. Knight takes knight. Bishop, I don't know, somewhere else. Like this. Let's look at developing first and see if knight d5 is a threat, right? Because when I saw this move queen b3, my actually first thought, Seth, was that this might be like an overplay by white trying to take this pawn, and my instinct is to develop this and castle and not defend the pawn. Because my opponent's going to play queen b3 and then spend time taking it. So my first instinct is to do something like this. Let's see. Take here, and I castle, right? So now I'm threatening to win back a pawn on d4. It's my simple plan, right? Just to equalize. And if white takes here, I'm going to try and get a tempo like that. Check here, I get a tempo. Bishop back. Take a tempo. Could I have tempo for 300, please? And there we go. I mean, it was very simple. Just one direct move after the next, and we've got compensation for the pawn here. If white blocks on d2, they lose the b pawn. So we're forcing, you know, king f1, king e2, something like that. And you know, then just play the game. Put the rook on the other open file. So this looks totally fine to me. Knight f6 check first. You can actually. I don't know if it'll change anything. Because after this black's threatening to win a pawn here. So you could trade and get exactly what we looked at, or you could, I suppose, spend a move retreating, right? That would be the extra option. Maybe this is a little bit better than what we saw before. Still try bishop b4 here. Right, and probably get something like this. It's one option. Maybe not quite good enough. Yeah, knight takes d4 was probably fine, Seth. It was simpler. Okay, so we're not going to analyze this in huge detail, Seth, to know whether or not it's good to leave this pawn hanging. It's possible. You could consider it. You could calculate it. You have to make your own decision. There's a good chance you could play like this. The other option is this move here, which is looking to be pretty simple, attacking the queen. I think white's going to take back. Right, and now the question is white threatening knight takes d5 now? They might be. They might be. If we play like bishop e7 or bishop d6 or something, white might be able to take it. I mean, the odds of black ending up in trouble here are pretty low. But it's possible. No, it loses. Because you can just take. And then after this, you have queen a5 and you take this piece. So you can just develop here and ignore this. But if this were actually threatened, you would still just have this move. Right? And then you just play queen d7, defending the pawns and offering a queen trade. And if you get this position, white's got nothing. Nada. Well, except maybe bishop g5 with a small edge. And maybe bishop g5 is mildly annoying. No, you've got knight e4 then, so you're fine. Whew. Thank you, bishop. Yeah, so this is the simple solution from Foos. And certainly something I would consider as well. Knight d4 jumps out as being probably fine for black. And if you wanted to play a more complicated game, you could maybe get away with this and put some pressure on your opponent to try and like ignore their queen b3 move and just develop quickly. Okay, so you play this move here, which isn't good. This happens. Your opponent wins that and castles. Choo. Right. So your first instinct was right. Queen b3 was probably overplaying it, or at least your first instinct was congruent with my first instinct. So we might be right, or we may have spent too much time together. But that's my instinct as well. And yeah. So for what it's worth, your instinct was on, and what you then convinced yourself of was wrong. You want to keep a tally between your instinct and then, what you think after, and figure out who's right more often. So. Okay, this position here, Not completely hopeless. One of the main things that makes it not hopeless is the opposite colored bishops. So in opposite colored bishop positions, with or without an extra exchange or a down exchange, the key is going to be the activity of the two pieces. So this bishop needs to avoid this pawn and get to this diagonal. And if so, white's position could be great. Black wants to somehow make use of this bishop, and it's a little harder to do because of the d5 pawn, and because white can often play f3 and just cover their kingside really easily. So often these positions will actually favor white's dark squared bishop over black's. You know, if you imagine white not having a rook, but instead like a knight on f3, right? And it would be sort of a more normal position without a material issue. Often the white bishop can outperform the black bishop, but it's got, you know, only one way to do it, so you can see it coming with black sometimes. If the bishop heads towards c3, sometimes knight e4 can deal with it. And if they go b3 and bishop b2, sometimes it takes too much time and black can land rook c2 before white's ready, because that's a weak light square. So the key to these positions for black is almost always going to be the c2 square. And I see that Seth played rook c8, which is correct use of the rook. Queen a3 was played, which is an odd move. I feel like the queen wants to stay more like central and try and like cover some of these squares that the bishop's going to need to get into the game. But she heads here, which looks very weird. Queen b8 is played. I was going to say I don't know why, but now I know why. It's because Seth wants to play knight g4 and force the g3 move, which would weaken white's light squares really badly on that side of the board. So white plays h3 instead to cover knight g4, which is better than playing g3. The question is it better or worse than playing f3? Because f3 also stops knight e4. And f3 controls more of this bishop's diagonals. Normally, you play f3 here. But, you know, it is weakening the second rank. So I can understand hesitating about playing f3 here, but it's probably going to turn out to be the right move, too, if we look at it long enough. f3 here. I guess you get this stupid pawn in this opening 80% of the time. Sounds about right, Giant Slalom. Sounds about right. Okay, so we get h3. What do you think, Seth? Was f3 on your mind during the game? Were you maybe a little more worried about f3? One of the things about rook c2 is white could even play... Oh, no, queen b3. Black's just going to move the queen to defend the rook. So this isn't going to help white, because black goes to one of these squares. And now you can't do this because of takes. And you also can't play b3 because your queen's in the way. Okay, so b3. Now we want to stop this move from white, right? So maybe queen b6. Or maybe queen e5. Now, if bishop b2, you've got queen e3, king here. So that's the probable downside. That's the downside to playing f3, is weakening the second rank like this, right? And f3 would have ended a lot of your hopes, yeah. And you would have switched to the second rank. Good. Good. It's right on. So we get here, here. And you guys have any ideas for black in this position? Baron's ready to finish a game. And that's how you pry open a rank, folks. That's the rook x-raying h2, while also tying the white pieces down to this bishop. That's why f3 has a downside. Let me put another idea into your minds just for your arsenal, folks. Knight to g4. So that's another idea. You can also do it through e4, right? Threatening here. And sometimes with this version, you'll have like a knight g3 kind of thing, right? So you don't need it here because bishop h3 ends things, but knight e4, knight g4 are also possible moves. White's trying to cover the light squares with everything they have. But, I mean, remember, none of these pieces can, like, cover g2, right? So you can throw everything you have. If, on the other hand, white tries to defend the second rank like this, what should black do? That's right. Like this. And notice that white was strong on the dark squares and black was strong on the light squares, but we finally have a tactic where we struck completely on the dark squares. And the thing is, white was so busy trying to cover their weaknesses, right? F3 to cover the weak light squares. Rook B2 to cover the weak second rank, that eventually white got entangled, broke up their own coordination on the dark squares. And this move just easily wins for black. Rook F2, that might be a defense. Trade, trade, hum. All right, we did okay there too. And against this move here, this move's tricky, right? Queen A7. I wanted to play Rook C7, attacking this, and then if the queen checks on the back rank, Rook C8, and it's done. But the problem is Queen B8, right? And you can't do anything. Yeah, it's a question, Sesh. It's a question. Oh, Foos, I hear you. Foos says Rook B2, Rook C1, Rook C1, Queen check. Rook F2 defends the Rook. Ah! I've been refuted. That's a refutation. Wow. So Rook B2 just barely does still hold on here. And I don't see anything fancy for black to do anymore. It's too bad I was counting on Rook C1 when I played this whole Bishop F5 move. Yeah. So I guess as Seth was saying, you know, in this Rook C2 line, he'd be partly praying, right? Like, it's not going well for him, but he's trying. He's trying. Maybe another idea would be D4. Hoping for, you know, pawn takes Queen E2 on the second rank. E4. Right? Still hoping for that counterplay. It's not going to be enough. It's not quite going to be enough for black, but we can see how it's kind of nice and tricky, right? There's some chances there. I think Seth understood the position totally well. Somebody was saying they would prefer bishop to D2 instead of H3 or F3, right? Making no weaknesses and just trying to come here. The issue is that allows Seth's idea of knight G4, and then he makes white play G3, right? And then these squares are really weak. these light squares. And then there's bishop h3, and there's knight c4, and there's still, you know, a host of dangers for white here as well. So there's no perfect answer. And that's one of the reasons why people blow these kinds of positions sometimes with white, right? Is you can see some counterplay coming from the opponent, and then you don't know which, you know, do I respect it or not, right? Do I play h3 or g3 or f3? Do I keep developing my bishop and wait for them to really make a threat, or do I start trying to set up a good defensive formation before they get there? It's hard to say. And like, if any of you were the person who'd lost this game as white and you brought this game, I would say critical moment. I would say here's an exercise where you set up this position here right before you played h3, and you double check that choice between h3, f3, and bishop d2. Right? And you set it up on a board, and you take your paper out, and you write down what you think. You give yourself 30 minutes or so, and you write down what you think, and you make that choice all over again, written on paper, and then you can go back and play out those variations on the board, and actually it's like taking your brain out, dropping it on the table and examining it and seeing what did or didn't go right with your brain. So they play h3. Seth comes into c2. Queen b3 actually happened, and Seth says, nope, no queen trade. And as I mentioned, now there's no b3. So this is another mistake from white. They didn't consider this, right? They're just trying like a little like, oh, maybe this will solve. They're annoyed, right? They're like, maybe this will solve my problems. Maybe then he'll resign, you know? Oh, well, they didn't know Seth was never going to resign. Queen c8, and yeah, now this bishop doesn't yet have any clear future. Rook d1. Working on the bishop's future. We'll give him that. Seth, you're so close to being able to just like come crashing through all these squares, right? Stopping this, f3, smashing here, right? Takes, and here. Problem with all this is queen takes rook, cleaning up and defending on the second rank. Ah, you're so close. Right, your instinct was to play knight e4, and your calculations said no. Queen b8, there's rook c8 Nordovik, but I mean, that is playable for white as well. But queen takes c2 is what truly ruins any semblance of a party for black. But, you know, I was getting ready for a party here, right? It's got that feeling of like everything's coming together from every direction, right? It's got the right feeling. But it's not correct. But maybe just knight f2 is good. Maybe this is what Seth didn't calculate correctly. It was just knight here, knight here. Because you threaten to take the rook, and if the rook comes up defending everything, then here. I'm going to be clever for white and not lose my rook because of this. There's probably some way for black to be okay here, but it's looking messy. I'm not sure it works. Is this what you were calculating, Seth? Does this work or not? You don't even want to say what you calculated. That's fair enough. I don't think knight f2 works. I'm not sure that that works. That position was very... Sorry. This position was very controversial at the end. King h2 exclam. Can't take the rook because the back rank mate. And if we block with this, the knight's lost. Where's the knight supposed to go here? I was thinking of trying knight h3 in this position. So if pawn takes, we could take the rook. And if the opponent plays something like rook d5, then hopefully queen g1's an attack. But this is very hard to calculate. After queen h1, the king goes to g3. And the knight's still hanging and the back rank mate. Our queen's no longer defending back rank mate and is no longer attacking the rook. So you're wasting all your tactical juice with this, guys. That's a throwaway move, queen h1, right? Because here, this is part of your potential, right? And this is your opponent's potential, and it's not yet checkmate. So when you play queen h1, now you've got this hanging and this back rank mate hanging. To me, this is a different kind of fancy version of self-forking by white, right? We've self-forked our knight and our back rank. Yeah. So I don't know what the next move would be here for Seth. You did look at that. That's nice, Seth. Good on you. Knight g3 is possible, but it doesn't prevent bishop d2, right? And white starts to untangle. I don't know if it was exactly in this position that someone was suggesting rook c4, but we might need to play rook c4 in this position. This bishop a4 threat makes the queen move to a better square. Now we can move this piece, but it's just kind of like a retreat now, right? There's nothing good about this for black, really. So I don't know, Seth. I don't know if I can make knight e4 work either. We might be in the same boat, you and I. Rook g2 for a perpetual. Here, queen c7. Here, maybe a knight check. Huh. It might be. It doesn't seem to be a perpetual statement. I mean, anything's worth considering here. Black's position is bad enough. But it seems like it's not a perpetual, right? So it's worth considering and then probably giving up on. So, Seth, you played bishop e6. Maybe a good choice. Here. I approve of what you're doing, Seth. I really do. Jeez. What a beast. Maybe you've got a hope here with bishop h3. Or knight takes d2. It says you played bishop f5 here. On knight d2, it's rook c2, right? Rook c2. If you take, just this is clean. So knight f3 takes here. Yeah. That's good, Seth. You're looking at all the right moves. And I mean, I don't think it's an accident that you saved this game. You posed real problems to the opponent, but you also didn't go for like a forcing line that just doesn't work, where like they just have to find one move and then you lose, right? You kept the game hard for them, right? When you couldn't justify knight e4 in this, knight e4 f3 in this position, you defended your center pawn, you know, and now they have to worry about this, right? And now you came here and then you got rid of the back rank, right? Here you were thinking bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, looks interesting, except for, you know, maybe queen b8 check, right? So you play h6. Just getting rid of back rank mate, and the pressure's still on white to untangle this whole thing. I think you made really good choices here. So I think you really put like the most pressure on them, on the opponent that you could. Now, I wonder about this bishop h3 calculation, so I'm going to do it too, just to double check it. So, let's say your opponent takes here, and you take. Now this is hanging, and they come here. If you trade queens, it's lost. So you can't take, unfortunately. You have to do like this. And then they come here. And this, right? This is the position you're basically getting if you go for bishop h3 here. It's not good enough. Yeah, it's not good enough. Yeah, still losing. If white takes here, then you get to do this. Which looks amusing, but might still not be anything, right? Here, checking. Oh? Oh, maybe perpetual. Because if the king ever comes this way, it takes with check and takes here, right? So here, we don't take the rook. Check. Has to go to one of these squares, right? Check. Or just checkmate if they go to that square. Sorry. Actually, you can checkmate them if they go this way. Here as well, right? You just check. Wherever they go, check. Wow. And if they come this way, of course, check here, here, and black's better. So, bishop h3 is super complicated. And I don't know. I don't have a great swindle or like comeback rate, so I'm not maybe the person to give advice on what kind of mistake is your opponent going to make, but bishop h3 is a little bit of a flip of a coin, right? If they take the rook, I think you lose, and if they take the bishop, I think you escape completely. The risk is not like super tremendous because, you know, in the rook c2 line, queen c2, pawn takes here, it's not like much worse than what you had before, right? I mean, if you weaken their king a little bit and traded a piece, you know. Oh, sorry. Rook c1 first has to be played here. Queen here takes this line, right? But there are less pieces on the board. I think they kind of do have to find it. Oh, right. Sorry. And I wanted to check this move before. This was the other move I wanted to check. Yes. This is a great move. This move actually kills white. Yeah. I remember I was thinking about this before. Thanks, Madara Kadonk. So this move here, yeah, so bishop h3, it's very, very controversial, actually. If rook c2, queen g4, basically looks winning, honestly, because, well, let me just show that again. Because you're threatening checkmate in d1, and if white, brings the queen to defend the checkmate on g2, then this is back rank mate. If white plays g3, you might even be able to ignore the rook and just checkmate here. I don't mean to get like too insane. Run down 2 rooks, but might be checkmate. And if they just take the bishop, yeah, then you play queen h3. So, okay, they don't have to take on c2 here, right? But if they don't, they're a bit tied up. I suppose if we ask what is black even threatening here, it's basically perpetual check. Maybe not even. Maybe queen f3. I guess white's got a lot of time to do something. So we could try this again for white. Yeah. Yeah. This sort of kills the dream for black, huh? Well, actually, we'll still be down too much material if we trade off the queens here. Rook against knight. And for anyone wondering, good technique is to try and queen one of these pawns that the king and knight are far away from. So just here and here. So we need something like just absolutely crazy here to keep playing. So we still have this queen g4 trick. White's light squares are still a little bit bad. We're threatening to win this piece. Bishop here. Probably losing in the end here. But it's a little tricky to play this kind of position, even with the full extra rook. Bishop c3 instead, Daster, there's this move. And probably black wins immediately. So it's messy. This is really messy. Seth, I mean, I don't know what you or your opponent would find in a game here, but this bishop takes h3 move is probably like beyond the calculating accuracy of yourself and the person you were playing against. I would guess it's like, I guess it's got to be just a little bit beyond the level for someone to like accurately have this down, right? There's a lot of ways to blunder here. I mean, rook takes rook, queen g4. That's just like a sick possibility, right? Someone could be counting on rook takes, queen takes, rook c1. There's many ways white could get this wrong here. There's also this weird f3 move here, right, folks? Just stopping queen g4 and not taking either of these pieces. That might be white's best move, and who would even consider it? Although by now this has gotten better than before, right? This knight takes move, right? Remember, they can't take because of c1. If they take here, then knight f3, and pawn takes, queen takes. This is much harder for white, technically speaking, now, right? I mean, queen d2, check. This is a whole struggle. This is a whole struggle. So I mean, it's maybe, it's like a shot you could maybe take. Practically speaking, it might be. Your opponent played queen b3 here. Right, because you just kept holding the tension. They couldn't do this. They just couldn't figure out how to untangle. It's nice, Seth, that you actually almost like didn't make any threats, but just sort of like stayed on top of the situation in a way that kept your opponent uncomfortable. And I suppose it looks like maybe time for f3, and then this thing happens, right? Like this, right? Whereas king just gets weakened a bit. Eventually, white could win this if they play great, but you're making them play a really tough game still. And there's a whole end game to play here, right? I mean, another 20, 30 moves with many difficult decisions in them and challenging calculations to cover, right? Because it's going to be all game long, they're going to have to try and avoid perpetual check. It's going to be very, 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 very strenuous to play that as white. A lot of effort burning throughout a game like that. No, this is fantastic defense, Seth. This is well deserved, this game. I mean, up on the clock or down on the clock. I mean, I just mean you're making them work. I think. So. Baron, white in this position played queen b3 to try and force the rook to trade on c1. But black took here, hitting the queen. And then when white traded the rook, the bishop came here, and now the rook and queen are attacked. White forgot the knight was also attacking the queen, tried to stop this bishop from winning pieces by going here, which stopped the bishop but not the knight. But it seems like white was lost at this point, right? I mean, they're going to lose this rook here after the queen moves. So, the comeback. Great, Seth. Great game. Good work. Yeah. Really good work that game. You made your opponent work hard, and they weren't up to it. They weren't up to the challenge. It's great. Okay. I think Daster You would be next if you're not leaving. Do you want me to look at your game now? No, I mean, if you want to, dude, it's a service. It's a service. If you don't want it, other people do. But I mean, I don't like the thought of you stuck in a slump that you can't figure out how to get out of. I'm not down with that. I'm not okay. Yeah. You made your own luck, Seth. You made your own luck. And if you're going to play out 500 ridiculous games where you're down 2 rooks until your opponent mates you, then you got to at least enjoy the times when you make a comeback. I mean, otherwise, what did you do? What have you been suffering for all these years if you're not even going to enjoy the comeback? You're just going to call yourself lucky when you get it. Right? Ghost, yeah, what's up, man? I'm finally on your time zone here. All right, we're about to see a Daster game. That's what's about to happen. Gonna try and figure out what's going on with the Daster meltdown. I mean, he's lost like 200 points, and he says he's in a slump he can't get out of. So. Oh, nice, Lestrade. Yeah, that's Greg Shahadi and Kostya mostly making that stuff happen. And maybe Hokie handling the technical part of actually getting it. Getting it, onto YouTube correctly. Today's lesson was Sam Shankland. I'm sorry I missed it. But of course I missed it. I mean, I'm swamped with my kids still for a little bit here. Okay. D4, D6. What are your principles, Daster? When someone puts a pawn in the center, don't you just take it? I'm going to stop you right here on move 1. What are your chess principles? Do you believe D4 is a good move? Do you believe in anything anymore? Or are you just, like, freaked out? You usually just take things when people put them in the center, yeah. That's weird, man. I mean, you can't let people just bully you around. You got to believe in yourself, and you've got to believe in your chess, I mean, if someone just comes, like, flying at you like a spider monkey, you got to take their pieces. You can't just let them do whatever they want. So... This, by the way, is a bad move, folks. Bishop g5. What does this move tend to do? It tends to trade the bishop for one of black's 2 kingside pieces. Is white looking forward to either of those trades? Is either of those trades favorable for white? No. So stop playing moves like bishop g5, folks, thinking that it's aggressive. It's not. It's just leading to bad trades. Right, but I mean, if you're afraid of like c3, blocking in their knight or whatever, I mean, okay. Right? Here I normally play d5, just cleanly developing. Man, Daster, when I first played you, you were a man of such principle. I mean, you played clean chess like this. You played classical principled moves. You brought out your pieces. It was hell to play against you. It was hell to play against you. You would have never feared, like, oh, the guy's playing another funky, weird move, like trying to sack a pawn, blocking in their own pieces. Yeah. This game is from like way into the slump, right? This is not like how the slump started. This is like the play of a man who's already slumped. Random fears. Yeah, so here you should go bishop e7 probably, just, preparing to make this trade, right? And bring out your bishop to g5 is going to be a pretty good diagonal for it. And if your opponent doesn't want to trade, you can already play knight takes e4, knight c3 next move, right? Like, this move, white even has to take without black playing h6. Or, well, yeah, because e4 is hanging. And if you play knight c3, then knight takes d5. And white famously loses a pawn like this. So this is like a horrendous move. Like bishop e7, white has to preemptively give up their good bishop. I mean, I would say this, Daster. After bishop g5, white's probably worse. And here, white's better. And this move, it's so bad. So anybody out there playing these bishop g5, bishop b5 moves, just making pointless trades and not realizing that the moves are making pointless trades and being like, I tried to be aggressive, but somehow I don't know why, but it didn't work out. For all of you doing these moves, like, black has played badly, and you can be worse on move 4 as white with one of these dumb moves. So, let's just ease up a little bit on these bishop g5, bishop b5 moves. Yeah, bishop g5 is fine in the Najdorf. Yep. Okay, knight bd7. Bishop. Oh my god, this guy's full of bad trades. a6, sure. Give me your pieces. Again, you don't even need to play a6. This move is so bad, right? You could play this move again. And you're threatening knight e4 and knight d5. And your opponent's just going to start giving you their bishops. They're just there for the handouts, right? They're coming. Okay, takes here. Good you didn't take with the knight. Knight c3, h6. Yeah. Good to see you too, Sokolov. Yeah. Daster, you're like chasing it instead of letting it come to you, right? So like bishop e7, right? You just let them give you your bishop. But you're same with the bishop on b5. You're like chasing it, right? But if you just play good moves, it'll come to you. Right? You're like in such a rush to this. Even if you're not hanging a piece, right? If your opponent just plays like knight e2, like you just spent so much effort getting that, right? Now they've got this, or now they've got this and this, that it's not even worth it by the time you get it. I want to emphasize that, Daster. Like by the time you've chased down that bishop here, with knight f6, knight h5, g5 weakening your king side, it's not even worth it anymore. Right? Because you've just killed your own bishop behind like just masses of this and left the light squares weak. So you're absolutely just trying too hard. And I would say this too, Daster. It feels like somebody who's chasing the points or chasing the win. Like maybe you've just lost a game before this. And not only do you want to get your like 10 rating points back, but you're like, if I'd won the previous game, I would have been up 8 points and I lost it. So I need to get back the 8 points I just lost and then go back and win the 8 points I didn't get in that game by winning. So I need this game to be over really soon so I can start the next game and then go get those 8 points, because I was already thinking about having 16 more points than I have. So you're in a rush. You're trying to like, you're just like throw everything at the opponent and like hope that they just give it all to you, that they just, fall apart, collapse, give it all to you, and you win in like 10 seconds, right? So you need to just play normal moves and let the game come to you. Let your opponent feel some of that pressure to try and win the game. But you don't have to make it happen on move 5 with black, right? You don't have to. It's like a mix of like you're trying to kill them and you're also terrified of them at the same point, right? So you're like in fear, you're like gun shy of some things. You've got these irrational fears that you have to dodge out of. At the same time, you're playing these like crazy moves basically on the hope that your opponent's going to play badly, right? And then they don't, you get hurt again, and you're like, oh yeah, I should be gun shy, and just back and forth. So you just need to like forget about the rush, forget about the rating points, forget about trying to get anything back, forget about like, don't even try to win the game even while you're playing the moves in that game. Just try and play a couple good moves, Sometimes they say take it one game at a time. Like you're playing an 8-round tournament. You can't be thinking like, oh, I'm trying to score 6.5 out of 8 to get my norm, blah, 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 and get this rating or, tie for second or whatever you think score it's going to need to be. They say just take it one game at a time. Just play game one. Just try and win that. But you need to even go further back than that. You're not in there to win the game. You're just in there to play some good chess moves. If the position happens to go your way, you can try to collect the point. But you can't go into the game trying to win, actually, because that's killing you even at this point. You need to just go into it, make some moves. And as your opponent makes mistakes, you ratchet up how much you want to take. Right? That's the really important thing. When a lot of times people lose quickly because their opponent makes a mistake and then they try and take like the whole arm when they should just be, pinching the opponent's finger. Right? So like Shinigami says, you can't win when you don't have an advantage, and you can't get an advantage by playing bad moves, right? Trying to force something that isn't there. Trying to be like, oh, you know what? This bishop, like I could chase it down, right? I mean, for one thing, your opponent could just come back to e3 and h6 weaken your position. Yeah, good to have you, Igelfeld. But this is serious, Dasser. You're assuming that you always get chances, right? So it's like on the one hand you're overconfident, and on the other hand you're like over scared, and the two things are mixing together. And then like as you play worse, you're playing against people who are worse, and the games are more riddled with mistakes, and so you've got more reason to be afraid of your own mistakes and more reason to be overconfident, expecting mistakes from the opponent. But yeah, you got to leave that all behind you. So, yeah. Just play normally again, Daster. Here. Let me help you out. Actually, I don't need to go here to do it. Is it this one? Why is our game not showing up? You played such a good game against me long ago, didn't you? Is it this one? Yeah. Yeah, just go back to some of your good games, Daster, and play over them again. Clean. Clean, normal chess. Let's not look at our bullet game. But didn't we even play one other game that's not showing up long ago in like the King's Gambit? Where's that? Where is that game? Maybe it was unrated and that's why it's not showing up here. It's not finding it. Shoot. I should find you that game somehow. And then you can just play over it. Maybe they don't save really old unrated games. It wasn't a dream, man. Yeah. But just let the game come to you. Just ask yourself, where should I put this piece? Where should I put my king? What file do I want to open? You know? And stop trying to win. That'll do it. I don't need to see any more of this, but I'll play through it anyway. You tried. You didn't give up. That's good. That's good that you didn't give up, man. Yeah. Instead of saying you've got your work cut out for you, I would say you just have to relax and it'll come to you. You're trying to do too much. All right. That's my spiel on that game. Great. Have fun with it. Have fun with it. Are you still around, actually? It's getting late, but it's fun to be back. It's fun to be back, so let's just keep it going. Are you white or black in your game? Whoops. White. All right. Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to share the names. 4.5 hours. Good luck, Seth. I'm sorry for ruining your day tomorrow, but it was sure nice to see you. And yes, Chess Zebra, I've been in Hawaii for 2 months. Got back during the night yesterday, or today, or got back last night. 2 NMs and 1 FM and 2.1, all with ratings in the 1600 range. Wow. Could be Eaglefeld, yeah. Ah, shucks. Yeah, I was on Oahu for the last 2 months. Viprahara, this is going to be the last game I look at tonight, but generally speaking, you can Whisper on Twitch, which looks like this. If you're in the Chess Dojo Discord, you can send me a DM in the Discord, or you can email it to me. My email is my last name at Gmail. Did I play any chess while I was there? Yes, I played a couple games with my friend Daniel, piano guy, and also with a guy named Michael and a guy named Paul. So I played a little bit of OTB with three people while I was there. But very, very little. I was basically just on kid duty the whole time. Probably played chess for like, 2 or 3 hours. That's right, Chess Zebra. Enuma. If he's your buddy, then yes, your buddy. All right, so let's see this game. Actually, he's got a major question about move 15, but we're going to quickly play through the whole game and then come back around to it. Yeah, well, Chess Zebra, the guy Michael is the guy I hadn't ever met or played before. He was a friend of Paul's, and he's like quite good as well. Like maybe 2100 plus. Interesting play from somebody. Okay. I see that. Okay, so the question here, why was rook d1 wrong? So this is what we're going to come back to, folks. This looks pretty bad for your opponent, man. That sounds right, Chess Zebra. Oof. Oof. Okay, we're going to stop there. Brutal, man. Well, actually, I mean, that looked like a really crushing game by you. I don't know what was wrong with rook d1. Looks like you just crushed this game. Oh, so a computer told you it's bad and you don't know what's bad about it. -2, huh? -2 is pretty serious, huh? Yeah, I mean, I know that. Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing the same thing as Igelfeld, right? The bishop g5 is going to be the right move. But let's start with why is rook d1 bad, right? Like, what's so bad about this? I mean, if he's saying the computer says -2, there's something very good black could play here, but didn't play. Yeah, I consider knight b4 Nodrovic. I don't see what the follow-up is after queen d6. Seems like then with the knight hanging, we might have to trade queens on d6. Knight c2, rook b1 doesn't seem to do anything. f4, queen d6, queen f6. Yeah, he trades queens. I mean, here's what happened in the game. Black played f4, which is logical. White took the pawn. Black traded like this and then tried to keep queens on the board. But after bishop e3, actually had everything covered, right? I mean, he was up a pawn. He kept everything covered. He won the game pretty methodically, right? So what? Maybe black shouldn't trade, right? Maybe you keep this tension because it's keeping the opponent's pieces at bay. Maybe black should just keep queens on the board like this, and maybe now it's tricky for white to coordinate these pieces quickly. But I mean, black still seems like a long way away from a threat, I guess. Bishop g4, rook d8 is coming. In some cases, you could even play f3, perhaps. Could have also played queen b6 instead of queen e8, maybe, yeah. So let's try that. What if you take the e pawn and try to get the queen to b6? That's possible, Sokolov. I think the problem is with the bishop on e3, it's always tough to get much done, right? So like here, let's say here. I mean, again, queen d6, bishop f5, maybe it's still a game, right? But, and we could discuss, you know, bishop e4, queen d6 or whatever. But I just want to basically say that it's going to be very hard to get anything going against f2 if white has bishop e3 available, right? That's just going to be such a self-defending, anchoring thing. Even without the pawn on f2, in the game, once white put the bishop on e3, I couldn't find any counterplay for black. I just didn't see anything at any point in that entire game. So let's try queen b6 here, right? With the pawn on f4. So now white could play c5. White could play queen c5. White could trade on f4 themselves, trying to bust the bishop out, but also opening this up. I mean, on c5, I'm a little bit wondering what my queen's doing here. Yeah, I saw that Igelfeld. Sorry, I just didn't see why that was likely to be any good. I mean, takes. We're not really getting any counterplay, right? It's all just kind of, position is just kind of dead. Like dead, like undynamic. Not like you have to resign immediately, but it's not very dynamic. Black's still down a pawn for the moment. These pawns are kind of bad later on. No, I mean, you can play like bishop g4, bishop f5. It's a little messiness, but yeah. It's not like everything comes together for black, right? It's just like there's some annoyances here and there, but to me, it doesn't feel like it's going to do what we want it to. And that's not even to mention that white could probably take here as well, right? I don't think there's like a tactic that's going to refute white here. Certainly not -2, as Sokolov says. Yeah, it's like, is it +2? Maybe, but it's definitely not -2. Does this queen have anywhere to go now when rook d8 gets played at some point? c7, I guess, because she gets kicked. She's got kind of nowhere to go, actually, is a problem. On this diagonal, there's this. On this diagonal, sorry. On this diagonal, there's this. I mean, the only thing I see is like queen b4, g2. Where am I headed? Queen a4? Sorry, I'm not drawing my arrow successfully, but okay, so here white has to watch out for this idea. Not easy, actually. I believe black has a threat of rook d8, queen c7, rook d7. I might be missing something, but that might be a queen trap. All righty, Rude. See you around. I mean, I don't know about -2 for black, but white's mildly annoyed here, right, actually? I've got this idea here and this idea. I don't see the move that pulls it all together. In this position. Yeah, it's definitely a not human -2, whatever it is. No human would look at this and be like, oh, -2. You might think like, oh, black's got some chances. Bishop c3 is the one move I'd already tried here, chess zebra. And then what I did was bishop g4, which is maybe wrong. Maybe I should just play f3. But here I played f3. Probably that's just like a mistake to play bishop g4 because it gives white the option of playing f3 maybe. But if I simply play f3 right away here, then, right, they're going to come here and I'll get rid of this. So I don't know that I don't know that I would call this -2 either, but black's in the game. Black's in the game. And I mean, this move isn't all desirable either. I mean, it's got some downsides as well. Like this whole thing is weak now. Forever. So strategically, what do you want to do? I don't know if you're asking me for white or for black, von Igelfeld, but I mean, white's a little bit discoordinated. White's struggling in some ways here. Black is clearly underdeveloped in the original position. Right, yeah. Okay, so if we look at the original position, we're like losing this pawn most likely, but we're also struggling to get these pieces involved So any version where this bishop comes out is going to help us a little bit. I think this pawn on f4 is a big deal, stopping this bishop from playing. That's really awkward for white. And I think ultimately that's going to be the human explanation for why the computer doesn't like rook d1, is that this bishop could have come to g5 and instead get stuck on e3. Now, not to get like too far ahead of ourselves, but this move here, most likely you're going to see bishop f6, right? And now you can't win this pawn anymore in the same way, right? Because if you take, they're defending it. If you go rook d1, with this rook, let's say, this time, your opponent still gets this. And the question is, why do we trade our good bishop for their bad bishop? But the thing is, this king is going to be weakened as we blow open the center here. Now we're threatening this, right? And the bishop has no square. We've got them both covered. So the opponent's doing something like this, right? And now white can take and open this bishop, and here at knight c5 or something. And it's going to be, you know, a pleasant position for white. And there's more options as well. And as Igelfeld says, you could go for something like this and then basically play for c5 just to blow this open, right? If you think there's some activity for black in that line, you could just play like this. And basically just whatever the opponent does, then blow open this area with c5. Okay, your computer wanted to play queen e8, and then the variations were just beyond what a computer could really understand, right? What a human can understand. So your computer said here, 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 and queen e8, which we haven't looked at yet, and then just said -2. Okay, so yeah, it's hard to say why it would be -2. But I would say the reason you're not up a clean pawn, that much I can answer you. You're not up a clean pawn because these pieces are in the game and you don't yet have a plan for getting them into the game, right? Now, your opponent's got some potential like to create a weakness here, but by keeping the pawn on f4, which your opponent didn't do, by keeping the pawn, you leave both of these threats hanging over white and don't let them use this bishop, right? As soon as your opponent traded, your bishop had e3, g5, even h6 in the game, right? So I think if black keeps the tension here, they've got a lot of counterplay, and you struggle to make any meaningful use of these two pieces for quite a while. So that's like a human answer. It's not backed up by any variations to prove the idea. But now you've got a mix of the human and the computer. Well, I'm glad to see, Nordovik, that you haven't spent that much time with computers, because it's very complicated. There's like so many different variations, and the computer will sometimes give 3 or 4 moves as being like pretty close in value, and do you follow all of them down, and how many moves deep do you go? And you may get like 10 moves down the road, and it like something happens in the variation, you're like, yeah, but that wasn't like forced. There were like 10 other options along the way on each move, and you don't really know why one or the other was preferred, etc. So it's yeah. What's your rating actually? 1800? 1900? Your USF's only 1455. Well, that's probably very low compared to how well you play. So perhaps 1900 is more appropriate, depending on whether you're 2000 ratings on chess.com or Lee Chess. But yeah, I mean, 1450 is low enough compared to your skill to make me laugh. But yeah, I mean, there's serious limitations to using computers. I don't really recommend it to anyone under 2200 FIDE. And as you see, like clicking down variations doesn't really tell us much. How satisfied are you with the answer I've given you so far? That this bishop's kind of like locked in and you can't make good use of it or your rook at the moment. That at least means it's not a clean pawn, right? But you'd still kind of be shocked that it's -2, right? You would think like, okay, well, so what? There's compensation? Is it equal? That b3 is struggling a little bit. It could get here, but then from there, may still have some work to do. Yeah. Like you could do this and then coordinate the rooks, but you don't have enough pressure on e5, so you're looking at like, rook d5 and sacking in exchange. Right? Rook d5, bishop c3, and trying to break through here somehow. But you also have almost no pieces on the king side. I think you mentioned the computer had one line that involved g5, like pawn takes queen h5 at some point, which is a little bit of a shock. But if we think how many white pieces are going to come to like good squares on the king side in the next 2 moves and 5 moves and 8 moves, it's an interesting thing to notice that we really don't have any pieces coming to the king side, do we? For white, like bishop d2 to c3 is an idea. That doesn't bring anyone there. Knight c5 doesn't really bring anyone there. You play rook d3 to cover some squares, but the rook's a little bit awkward there. And certainly not quite over there. Good for you, Eric. Good for you. Somebody mentioned that, probably actually mentioned that there was some computer line that's from this position started like rook d5, g5, and it's just hard for actually to comprehend like what's going on and why do these moves all make sense. So yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a factor that black's got space on the king side and there's just not many white pieces coming there. That's a piece of what black has here. And yeah, I guess that's mostly what we've got for this position. Can AI versus AI ideas be good to watch or not? They can, Sebrehen, for masters, I would say. But for non-masters, they're probably just confusing and not something that you can apply to your own games. Like, you don't understand the reason behind a move. How can you use it, right? Like, for example, I tell people, not to play the move c4 unless they have an idea behind the move. In the opening, to always only play your own moves. Any move you want to play, you have to have a reason for it. It can't just be like, well, I saw it in a book, right? You have to have a reason for the move that you can understand in order to learn from whether that move does or doesn't work. In a similar vein, if you look at a game played between, Stockfish and Leela or something, and you don't understand any of the moves they've played, you don't really have any way of applying those moves anywhere. You're as likely to misapply them as to apply them correctly if you don't know the idea behind the move. So, basically useless. Is it clear that Queen E8 must be preparing a kingside attack? Not necessarily. It's not like the only reason for it. It could just be a way to avoid a queen trade, right? And continue development. Bishop e6, rook d8. Or bishop g4, rook d8. It doesn't have to be a kingside attack, but it does have an extra option there that's perhaps notable. But primarily it's avoiding a queen trade. Good question, Gratify. I would say white would like to force trades using their strength on the d file. but that didn't work. We almost ran the black queen out of squares for a trade, right? Like when she went to b6, I almost tracked her down with these moves, but not quite. She hit on a4, and that was annoying. And e8's the only other square, and she just barely has, nowhere else, no other breathing room. She's almost trapped for a trade. So that would be something White would try and do, is use this to force trades. You can also try and pressure the e5 square, but that's hard to do because it's pretty well defended. If you could play b4, b5, that would help. Knight a5, maybe to try and trade this knight, but it'll probably go to d4, dodging you, and then your knight will be bad on a5, right? I mean, with bishop d2, of course, I'm not hanging the knight. Bishop d2, c3, you could play knight a5, trying to increase the pressure on e5, trying to trade that knight, but the knight just comes to d4, and then the knight on a5 is bad. Trading on d4 leaves White with really weak dark squares. You could play rook d5, plop your rook in the center, look at exchange sacrifices. You're already up one pawn. If you could play rook takes e5, where you get a piece and a pawn for that rook and open up the king, that could be playable in some cases. But yeah, maybe knight c5 to d7, using your power on the d file, and then the knight trades itself for something, maybe. Another idea to play for. Knight d2 to f1 to b1 to c3 to d5. Yeah, if you could reposition the knight here. Excuse me. Could be another idea for White. It's like a long road to really improve these three queenside pieces meaningfully. And partly White's plan isn't like to take back the king side or blow open the center or make progress on the queen side. It partly is dependent on like what can you do to improve these pieces, and then do what they can do. It's a lot of moves, actually. Yeah, it's really a lot of moves. So that was kind of an issue. Your pieces are like many moves away from being on good squares here. Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, White's whole coordination would be much better with that bishop out of the way, right? Question of whether knight b3 is an inaccuracy. Normally in a position like this, you play knight b5. Looking at these squares with the knight. Then if your opponent played knight e8 to stop knight d6, honestly, you could still play it. Right? And just do this. You can also play knight d5, and then when the opponent plays a6, put this knight here. And White's just better coordinated than before. So, yeah, it's pretty clear that b3 is a weird square for the knight to go to in this position. That's definitely likely to be a mistake. Basically, it just sends the knight on a bad route. But overall, actually, that's just a fantastically played game. Another reason not to look at the computer is you just played a great game, and then you're like, oh, -2, like, what is wrong? Like, my opponent played this weird e5 move, I got a great position, I'm, like, crushing. Like, if you hadn't ever looked at the computer, you would have never thought that you played a bad move in this game. Now, some people would say that's a bad thing. It means you're not realizing your mistakes and you can't improve. But actually, there's a time and a place to learn every different mistake, right? Like a lot of the times, if somebody's 1200 and they try and look at every mistake the computer points out, they're not developmentally ready to fix those things in their game, right? So if your opponents aren't strong enough to point out the mistake, and if you're not strong enough to find the mistake on your own, or if you look at your games with a training partner of a similar rating as yours, and together you guys don't notice the mistakes and you just think you played a great game, probably that mistake is something you weren't developmentally ready to address. And it's actually better, in my opinion, not to know about that mistake and not to be worrying about it and trying to learn things that you're not yet ready to learn. Okay? Like, it can be actually good not to know every mistake you made. If you just knew suddenly, which a lot of people do now with computers, if you just suddenly knew every single move that you played that was ever a mistake, but you don't understand why because you can't follow the computer analysis. So, like, every game you play is like, oh, it was a terrible game. I played all these mistakes and I don't even understand why, and I'm trying to like figure it out. Like, you're working on questions you can't understand. It's frustrating. You're never proud of your games properly. I mean, are you proud of this game actually that you played here? Because if you're rated 1450 USCF, you should be very proud of this game. Yeah, I understand people use the computer because they've got nothing else. You played really well, actually. You should be really proud of this game. Yeah. It's a fantastic game. So, yeah, that makes sense to do, Helgilda, to find one move you can change, but on your own, not just like the computer pointing it out. And that's the thing. Like, if you look at a game of yours on your own, you're more likely to find one mistake. And that one mistake is more likely to be the kind of developmentally appropriate mistake for you to be working on and improving. But if you look with a computer, it can tell you like 6 different mistakes you made, and it's both overwhelming, you don't have focus, and some of those mistakes are not mistakes that you're prepared yet to understand. So that's why I think it can be sort of overwhelming, right? And I'd rather not find the mistake or only find one mistake on my own or not be sure if it was a mistake, etc. By focusing on it, Igglefeld wanting to be more aware of their time usage, you just have to focus on it. You have to say that's the focus of your current chess improvement, and you do a 2 to 4 week or 6 week even stretch where that's kind of like a focus, and you're checking the time and you're writing down how much time you use per move, and when the game's over you go back and look at your time usage and you analyze your time usage instead of your moves. So instead of trying to see like, was there a better move on move 13, you say, which moves did I spend a lot of time on? Moves 10, 13, and 21. Was it reasonable? Or there's no move that stands out where I spent a lot of time, but there's like no move I played quickly. Every move took me like a minute, even like basic recaptures. And so you go through and you try and find a few moves that you could play in 3 seconds in the future. Like, where are there a couple moves that are obvious that you need to just play? So you analyze the game for your time usage, not for your moves at all. If that's your focus, you got to pick 1 or 2 things at a time that you're trying to get better at. And if you're trying to get better at your time usage, forget about everything else, really, and just look at that. So when you look at the game, you're just like, knight f3, 1 second, good. G5, 2 seconds, good. D5, 10 minutes. Was that worth it? How much time do I think I should have put into this move? And you just think about it that way. Not whether the move was good or bad. Right. If you're playing OTB tournaments, just like Actually says, you want to write down the time on your score sheet. If you're in a phase of your chess development where you're working on your time usage. All right. That's a wrap for tonight, folks. I hope it was as fun for all of you as it was for me. It often works like that, right? Like, if you're having fun, then the others are having fun too. Everybody around you having fun. Let's see what's going on in the chess world today. Where should we be rating? Midnight Blitz, 4-player chess. Gigahertz and Lexi show featuring John? What is that? Daster is streaming, Nordovik? Is that so? Thanks, guys. If Daster's on, let's go cheer him on. See if he can break his slump while getting while having the unusual situation of having hundreds of people watching him play. Right. All right, guys, be good.